Your Excellencies, welcome to today's critical convening, upholding women's rights as human rights in Afghanistan, an urgent moment for Yanama renewal. I'm ԱՄՆ-ում and I direct the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and I'm pleased to be able to moderate today's event along with our co-host, the United Kingdom and Qatar, on behalf of the Group of Friends of Women in Afghanistan, UN Women, our Institute, and the co-sponsors, the permanent missions of the United States, Canada, Ireland, France, and Indonesia. Thank you to those of you joining us here at the United Nations and for the many who are joining us virtually from around the world. We come together at a profoundly difficult moment for the world that calls for even greater international cooperation. Many are working day and night to address the tragedy unfolding in Ukraine, a tragedy that threatens many of the values we hold dear: freedom, democracy, territorial integrity, and more. We are grappling with the unprovoked invasion of a peaceful nation, a flagrant violation of international law, and an unfolding humanitarian catastrophe that demands the full attention of the international community and includes a special focus on women and girls who face their own specific challenges. And I would like to acknowledge the representative from the government of Ukraine here today. We come together to draw attention at this session to the ongoing crisis in Afghanistan, which continues to deteriorate. It holds grave consequences for global and regional security, and it is imperative that the United Nations lead the way in advancing effective international action. Afghanistan is facing a grave human rights crisis on top of an unprecedented humanitarian emergency, with especially severe consequences for women and girls. Peaceful protesters have been threatened and harshly punished. Women's rights activists and journalists have been detained, and the Taliban authorities have imposed wide-ranging restrictions on media and free speech. Afghan women continue to stand up against the Taliban rule in defense of their hard-earned rights. Shortly, we will hear from Afghan women leaders now living in exile to discuss the ongoing human rights crisis in their country, as well as hear their call for a more effective and urgent response. It is now my distinct pleasure to give the floor to Her Royal Highness, Sophie, Countess of Wessex, a longtime advocate for women and girls, particularly on issues of women in peace and security. Your Royal Highness.
Thank you, Milan, and thank you very much for this opportunity just to make a very few brief remarks before we get to have the opportunity to hear from our Afghan briefers, which is what we're here to do. Last week, I met an Afghan translator who left Afghanistan in 2014 and who now lives in the United Kingdom with his wife and family. He's still in touch with family and friends in Afghanistan, and he was almost in tears as he told me what life is like there now. While the men in his family have suffered at the hands of the Taliban, it is the women in his family who can only step foot outside if they are accompanied by a male relative for whom he fears the most. Most of them dare not even go out of their houses at all, terrified of being taken, abused, or worse. He is frightened for so many women and girls who have now become virtual prisoners in their own homes. Life has regressed, yet the Taliban would have us believe that they are allowing citizens to go about their normal activities. We know that this is not true. So while we welcome their announcement that they have committed to reopening schools to girls this month and the return of some women to university, what we know is that the rights of women and girls have worsened, and Afghanistan is facing a desperate humanitarian and economic crisis, and that there is severe food insecurity. It is so hard to imagine how much has changed for so many in so little time. Where once there was hope, with women playing a central role in society, there is now hunger, destitution, and violence. And now our attention is at risk of being diverted from Afghanistan with the devastating invasion of Ukraine by its Russian neighbour. But while our focus has naturally turned to these events, the crisis in Afghanistan has not gone away, and the effects are worsening daily. So what can we do to help the women and girls of Afghanistan? How can we support the brave women peace builders and activists and all those who have stood up to the Taliban to demand their rights while risking their lives in doing so? How do we ensure that the international community remains involved and engaged with the issues that Afghanistan is facing? These are difficult questions to answer, but I hope by hearing directly from those on the ground as to what the main priorities are and what can be done, we can move some of these critical points forward. I'd like to thank you all for coming together today, and I look forward to hearing from you as you respond to the briefings we are about to hear and recommit our support for the women and girls and people of Afghanistan. Thank you, Milan.
Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness, and thank you for your compelling remarks and your dedication to this issue. We're going to turn now to the Honorable Rosemary DiCarlo, the United Nations Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs.
Thank you, Milan. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first let me thank the group of Friends of Women of Afghanistan, particularly the co-chairs, Qatar and the United Kingdom, as well as the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security and UN Women for organizing today's event. To say this event is timely is an understatement. A week ago today, the world marked International Women's Day. But around the world, we see the erosion of the rights of women and girls. In Afghanistan, the current situation women and girls are facing is most concerning. Over the 7 months since the Taliban seized power, women's fundamental rights and freedoms, the fruit of 20 years of struggle, have been drastically rolled back. On International Women's Day, the de facto authorities reiterated their commitment to, and I quote, addressing the plight of Afghan women in light of the noble religion of Islam and our accepted traditions, end quote. However, women leaders, human rights defenders, activists, journalists continue to be intimidated, forcibly disappeared, arbitrarily arrested, and sometimes killed. Women and girls have been sidelined from public and political life. Their attire, movement, and voices are subject to policing and surveillance. I saw firsthand when I visited Afghanistan in July 2019 the enthusiasm of Afghan women as they prepared to support and participate in the peace process. The women I met were ready and eager to play a role in their country's future. When I returned to Afghanistan in December 2021, I witnessed a very